Hello, hello. I know I'm using my phone and everything instead of trying to do my laptop because it's been finicky. So if I go tumbling, I'll catch. I'll recover.
I hear you. I always use my phone, and that's always my biggest fear is that it's just gonna
And
fall onto
shatter.
me.
Yeah.
Well, we're finally here.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it was had to be like a month or 2 months ago now that we talked initially and you read the arc, and I can't believe how fast it ended up going by.
I know it felt like an eternity when we scheduled it, but it came just as quickly as I can imagine. So,
Quick, so quickly. It's insane.
well, release day was officially yesterday. How did it go?
It was incredible. I am still overwhelmed. I'm still like I've got like bags under my eyes because how much I cried yesterday. Like good, I mean in a good way. It was overwhelming. It's so different going from indie pubbing where it was like I put out a book every few months to this where I turned it in like a year ago. So having that much time building up is a lot. Oh, it was a lot for me this time. I think it'll get easier over time, but yeah, it was a lot. I gotta plug you in now. Wait, hang on. There.
No, I was actually talking, I think you know Allie Rosen. We were talking about that today actually about how crazy like traditional publishing like timelines are and how like you can turn things in like a year to 2 years in advance and it's just the wildest thing.
It is insane. It's crazy. I might have to hold this now. I really just bear with me. It's been a very busy day, busy week.
You're fine.
Okay, we're good. Sorry, everybody. Enjoy my close up. Oh man. All right. I think we're good now.
You good? Ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we are talking about Savor It, which came out yesterday. So you already gave us like a little hint that you started indie. So do you want to just kind of talk about that real fast and where you started and where you are now?
Yeah. I started writing it during 2020 when everybody was stuck at home, and I had started picking up my first contemporary romances. I'd always been mostly a romantic fantasy reader up until then, and I just wanted to reach for something light and fun, and I found everything I was looking for and more, just with the depth of the stories and characters I could actually fully relate to. And I fell in love, and so I started writing random things that would pop into my head, and eventually I started writing a book. And I knew that if I didn't enter the query trenches or anything like that, I just decided I'm doing this for fun. I'm going to throw it out there, and if anybody likes it, great. If not, oh well. At least I won't deal with huge rejection. So I just threw it out, and it went better than I could have hoped. I wrote Funny Feelings right after that, and then the co-op, and my agent read the co-op on Kindle Unlimited, reached out to me on Instagram of all things, and then we just kind of went from there. I was already working on Savor It at the time, and we pitched to traditional publishers, and St. Martin's bought up my new books and my backlist.
That's so exciting. I love that.
Yeah, it's crazy that all of that was a year ago. It feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah, time, it's just flying by. And I mean, even 4 years ago, like we were talking about this the other day, 2020 doesn't feel like 4 years. It feels simultaneously like it was a lifetime ago, but also like it was
Yeah,
yesterday.
it feels 2020 itself felt like it lasted 5 years. So I feel like
Well,
it's a bit of a mulligan on at least a year there.
this is fair. Do you want to go ahead and give us like a spoiler-free-ish synopsis of Savor It?
Sure. Um, I will start with one of my favorite blurbs from Julie Soto, who said it was like Schitt's Creek and the bear had a love child. There's definitely like it's kind of like a degenerate Stars Hollow, a quirky small town. A formerly Michelin starred chef is asked to help consult on opening a restaurant in sort of a budding tourist town on the Oregon coast, and that's Fisher. And he's recently been fired. Um, he's dealing with some grief in his life and has also become the guardian to his teenage niece. He goes out to Spoons, Oregon for the summer, and his neighbor is our beloved Sage. She's a teacher during the school year. She's off for the summer and runs kind of a hobby farm. She's sort of our quintessential sunshine small town girl. And she sort of sees him struggling, and they offer each other some help for the summer. Sorry, I'm trying to get my dog down. What are you doing? But yeah, and then romance ensues.
Yeah, and I like, I mean, as a reader, I don't look for things I dislike, so it's not hard for me to say like I love a book. But the way that I love this book is like
Yeah.
I don't know how I don't know. I don't know how to talk about it without just being like I don't have words, but it is so good. It's so all of the things. So funny, so sweet, so sad at some points. Like it just does it all, and you did such a great job. And I don't know, I don't want to make you uncomfortable or anything, but like it is so good.
Thank you. No, thank you. That means the world to me. It's definitely um, I kind of let loose with it. I feel like I really just I put so much pressure on it at first, and it was funny because I was definitely in this spot where I was sort of going through what Fisher is going through, like a little bit of burnout, and I don't want to say like disenchantment, but it is. I was kind of like that with writing because it can be like something that's really hard for when you put so much into it, not knowing what always makes it across. And but everybody has different tastes, just like everybody has different palates. And I definitely was reaching for some of Sage's hopefulness, and so writing them both was so cathartic because I really got to lean into. It was very natural to write Fisher, but I really got to reach for Sage, and I don't know. It was I loved that town. I loved writing a weird little place in Oregon because I love Oregon, and yeah, it was great. Thank you so much.
Well, I do want to talk about Sage because she is just like the epitome of the nice girl. And you see it in the book how she can like kind of struggle with that reputation because it like nice girls do get bad raps. And I just wanted to know, like, you said it was easy to write Fisher, but why did you want to include her personality? Was it for the hopefulness or were there other pieces to it?
Definitely for the hopefulness, and because I there's something to be said for just being a kind human being, and I think that when you do small things, and I mean maybe don't like have these grand expectations of yourself or even like grand ambitions, um, it doesn't mean make you any less of a person. It doesn't mean that you mean less to people, but I wanted to show her sort of struggling with I'm not just what I am to other people or what I give to other people or what I do for other people, or you know what animals I take in. And I wanted her to like start to own who, she's in a place where she's kind of come on the other side of that a little bit more than like Fisher's more going through it. But she's sort of on the other side, like fiercely defending what her values are. And it, I love that. I love like, just because I'm nice doesn't mean that, I'm weak. And I really wanted to differentiate that.
Yeah, I also thought the message of like it's okay to just really strive for happiness and that be like what you want out of life. Like, I think that we do put way too much pressure on this idea of like everybody has to accomplish so many big things. And so I think it was really refreshing to read a character who was like, honestly, I just want to love my life and I'm okay with that. I think that was really special.
Thank you. I love the idea of like, it's something that I'm trying to learn even when it comes to writing and everything. A lot of us put so much energy into the outcome of something or this hope, result we hope for, that you sort of rob yourself of the joy of like doing it. Like, even when it comes to writing, like I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, and saying that I love it every day would be a flat out lie. But I get to do something, for a career. And so just because if I never like reach these massively lofty goals or, some crazy amount of notoriety, doesn't mean that I don't get to revel in the joy of doing it. And I really love the idea of stepping into the present fully.
Well, have you struggled at all since going with a traditional publisher? Like, has there been feelings of pressure because of that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not that, but it's mostly self-induced. It's mostly like I have these high expectations of myself. You know, I'm a classic perfectionist. I'm just, and there's also something just very like there's always this pesky sort of hope for more, or hope for, what is this going to be. And if you're constantly thinking about that, thinking about like, well, what if I hit a bestseller list, or what if this happens, what if somebody wants to make a movie one day out of this, like if you're constantly thinking about that kind of stuff, you're going to miss so much. Like I have had so many days where I've had so much fun actually writing, and like just had so much joy. If I didn't actually like absorb those days, and where it's only, if I was only focusing on like, well, are people going to like this about her, are people going to like this about him, are they going to be, if I was constantly thinking like that, I would rob myself of so much. But I think that in terms of the pressure and everything, it's unavoidable. You just you just hope that people get the message. Like, I mean, down to the title, it's pretty hammered in. But yeah, you never know what's going to make it across the page.
Well, going back to the characters, I think of Fisher as like, I mean, obviously he's coming in, he's a New Yorker. He can come off kind of gruff, but like in my mind, he's kind of just like a tired teddy bear.
Definitely.
So I wanted to know, I mean, we've talked a lot about them already, but how many iterations did each of the characters go through? Or were they kind of fully formed as soon as they got on the page?
I would say that these were probably my most fully formed, that stayed consistent from the opening to the end. I mean, you nailed it. A lot of people think of Fisher as like super grumpy. I think he's just tired and going through it, and a little lost and burnt out. Like he's somebody that he's put all this pressure on himself, and like I have to figure out how to parent a teenage girl now, on top of like, who am I without my career? I've been defining myself by my career and my success that way. I don't have that anymore. Who am I?
And you touched on the grief element that, he's kind of actively going through and Sage has navigated that. But I really appreciated how you kind of, there was just a message of it does take time. It looks different for each individual. So why did you want to like so actively illustrate that theme?
I think that grief especially is just this, it's constantly different. It doesn't matter, the only thing that toughens you up a little bit to it is time, but it never goes away. It's one of the sneakiest emotions. You never know like when it's going to sneak up on you. It can be nothing, just one tiny song, or like anything that triggers you. I just think that it is one of those defining emotions in our lives and moments, and because I think that people handle it differently. Some people think like, what matters if all of it can be swept away in a, a heartbeat? Why does any of it matter? And that's a very real thing to go through and to work through. And then other people are like, no, everything matters, and I have to try to let it matter. I have to try to feel everything. I I just think grief also just is one of those powerful things that can put things in perspective like that. And even though it's one of the most difficult things to write, um, it's one of the most beautiful things to write too, I think.
Do you find any sort of like therapy in writing that?
Yeah. I feel like I end up therapizing myself in every book, in every way. But sorry, you can hear everybody's home today. Um, yeah, absolutely. And my favorite parts in my books usually come from those honest places like that. Um, Being able to put some of your own grief down on paper is, I'm a big advocate for journaling and that kind of stuff, because when you can take something that's intangible in your head and somehow make it into this tangible thing on paper, it's very helpful and therapeutic.
I don't know like what the process is with traditional publishing, but when you were indie publishing, did you have like sensitivity readers or just ARC beta readers?
I always source sensitivity readers for topics like that. I had numerous for Funny Feelings when it came to deaf readers in the deaf community, and yeah.
That's really helpful. I mean, I'm sure it's always helpful to get other perspectives, but I'm sure it's.
Well, and especially because, again, just like grief, everybody handles things differently, and so being able to get feedback from somebody else and make sure that I'm taking other people's feelings into consideration is huge. I think that romance, specifically having this guaranteed happily ever after at the end, makes it so it is a safe place to explore some heavier themes, but you want to make sure your readers feel safe. That's why I do trigger warnings. That's why I take the time to have sensitivity readers, and you don't want people going in and being. I mean, I am sorry that I do still make people cry a lot, but I try to warn them in advance.
Well, kind of pivoting away from grief and that heavy topic. Um, so Sage and Fisher eventually, and this is not a spoiler, it's a romance, everyone, but eventually they do enter into a physical relationship, knowing that, as you say, summer doesn't last forever, and it's got a timeline on it. And so I wanted to talk about why it's important to include like shamelessly choosing pleasure, especially for females.
Oh, I mean that's my favorite thing about romance, especially like even when I was younger and everything. When it's done well, like, it's such a important message. It's just like, especially I love that like more generations are talking more openly about everything, um, and representing sex in like a very realistic and lovely, healthy way. I think that when it comes to romance, I've read it. I've read every type of, open door, closed door, door doesn't exist. Doors also. I've read every type, and I just think that um, it's such a lovely like inclusion, because it's part of my character's story. For at least for me, I try to make their sex scenes like fit who they are and important to who they are. Um, it's intimate. It's intimacy, and it's a way that they are growing and getting closer. And especially when it came to these two, them knowing like this is what we are. We're going to make the most of it while we are here together. I had a lot of fun with it.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit already, which is their personalities are very different. And, you've said that you had no trouble writing Fisher. But how did you approach writing both points of view? How did you dig for, maybe Sage where you weren't necessarily as comfortable with that voice?
Um, I think especially like when it comes to writing, I usually when I get the initial inspiration for whatever I'm writing, the very first thing I do is a character profile because I feel like my stories are really character driven, and I think when I establish a good profile for them, it makes it so they make consistent choices throughout. But that way, I also have something to refer back to that way. So I usually start with an Enneagram, and from an Enneagram, a lot of times I'll end up developing or like deciding what their star sign is, and I just end up trying to really get to know them down to like silly things, like what would they order for breakfast and that kind of stuff. So when I'm writing, a lot of the times that I get to refer back to that and be like, okay, she's been sweet and it's okay for her to like banter back and forth and kind of be a smart ass with him, but if she was straight up mean or slam the door in his face, that wouldn't be consistent, that wouldn't track. So that's kind of how I at least stay consistent. And then usually I cross reference and just try to make sure I don't use like the same like expressions for each of them, and or ways of speaking. I'll kind of change up the sentence structure a little bit so that I've never Fisher, I kind of got away with it because he's in a very artsy, touchy-feely field and career, but I hope he doesn't hear me say this, but I don't think my husband's ever said the word caress. So like, I try to make sure I don't make them not sound like how real people would sound.
That's such a fun insight. I think everybody now wants to know their Enneagram numbers and their star signs.
Oh gosh, I know. I have a whole notes app on this. Oh, I'm on my phone. That's why I don't have it. I believe that Fisher was I want to say he was a 4, like an individual, a creative, and I think that I had Sage as like a 2, wing 3, or something like that. I'll have to refer back, but I think that that's kind of what she likes, feeling useful to others, and that gives her a sense of accomplishment and pride. I think, and he is an individual, like he's very trying to pay attention to like what he is, his identity and all that. And then I think as far as their star signs, Sage was definitely a Pisces, and Fisher, I think I made him a Virgo. That might have been Meyer. I think maybe Fisher was either a Taurus or a Virgo. I have to check.
As soon as you said star sign, and like admittedly, I don't really follow it that closely, but as soon as you said it, I was like, Sage is definitely a Pisces. Yeah. I'm a Pisces. I know she's a Pisces.
1,000%, 1,000%.
Yeah.
Wears her emotions like in the palm of her hand. Just I love Pisces. So
yeah. I love that. That's so fun.
It's
well,
consistent. Like as much as I'm like, I don't need something to define me, they're all so consistent.
Well, so Savor It is like we keep returning to the same things, but it's so funny and it's incredibly sexy, and then there are moments that break your heart. So how do you go about writing all of the good things and all of the hard things and just making it such a great experience?
I just I never set out to be. I think writing humor is the hardest thing to write. Humor is extremely subjective, and it literally can fall flat because it's two-dimensional. You're reading it. You don't know how somebody else's brain is going to picture it or translate it. So writing humor itself is, to me, the most difficult thing to write. Not everybody's going to think the same stuff is funny. And not everybody's going to get it when you're being tongue-in-cheek or when you're being sarcastic about things, because you can't insert inflection in there. Shout out to the audio book though, because they killed it and they nailed every inflection. Um, that being said, I sometimes it just happens. I don't necessarily set out to like I have to try to be funny here. It's just that life is kind of funny, like even when it's dark. And I think that again in romance, it makes people feel safe when you can be talking about something very heavy and deep. My one of my favorite scenes is when Indy and Sage are bonding over their grief and being, orphaned essentially, but the way they both approach it and making that character feel seen by another character helps the reader feel that way too, I think. Um, and then I don't know why there's I don't always set out for there to be like sad moments or heartbreaking moments, um, but they just happen. I just think that I also think that having something hurt a little bit in there makes it so that happily ever after feels that much more earned. And I really like to show that my characters can handle whatever's thrown their way. Because I think that it makes it so I believe that they go on to live happily ever after off the page when you show that they can handle, some heartbreak too.
My favorite books are the books that make me want to rip my heart out of my chest. So fantastic. Five stars.
Girl, me too. I love when I'm a wreck.
Yes, the mascara, the ugly cry, it's the best.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to have something else other than, reality, like hurting your feelings. So,
Well, if readers could take one thing away from Savor It, what would you hope that it would be?
oh God, to, not rob yourself of the joy of the present. As corny as it sounds, savor it. Savor what you got in the present. Whatever you're doing, not every day is going to be fun. Not every, a lot of shitty days are going to have plenty of moments of joy though too. Try to hold on to them and try to just make the most of whatever's at your fingertips, I guess.
I love that so much. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you have a couple more minutes, I did want to ask a little bit about writing process. And okay, so what is your writing process like? How has it changed over time? And maybe just if you have any sort of tips for aspiring authors, writers, people that want to get traditionally published, all of the above.
Oh gosh, I'm the wrong person. I will say I am the wrong person to ask about when it comes to wanting to get traditionally published, but I have friends that have been that always like share excellent resources. There's all sorts of mentorship programs and everything as far as there's uh, gosh, now I'm blanking on the names. But there's a whole bunch of resources. I know that Jessica Joyce shares them a lot. Um, Livy Hart is another one that shares them a lot. I'm totally spacing. I'll have to get back to you on those. But as far as like really revving up your query letter, and if you're trying to get an agent and all that, I'm the wrong person to ask because I got just painfully, extremely lucky in that aspect. But as far as writing process, it's a little different for each book, and I think that that's okay. I think that that's just a natural progression. Usually, inspiration kind of strikes, and you something just sort of grabs hold, and again, whatever that inspiration is, I immediately sit down and figure out who the characters are first. Like with Funny Feelings, it was I wanted to write Farley. Like and because I was watching stand up all the time, and I was like, all these female comics get a bad rap for what they are, but male comics go up there and do things even worse, and they're even raunchier and even more like wild, um, and they don't suffer for it in terms of dating life. What could I do? How could I approach a story where somebody sees everything that in her and appreciates it and loves it about her? And then, from there, it just kind of chipped away and got to The point where, like, well, maybe he has a respect for the profession because he was in it. When it came to Savor It, the very first time I thought of Savor It was when we were on a road trip to Coos Bay, and we went over this big green bridge, and everything is moody and like fog, like just tendrils of fog everywhere. It's very Forks, Washington. It's very, felt like I was driving into the Twilight Town. But then we went over a big green bridge, and all of a sudden there's like these giant sand dunes that looked like they belonged in the middle of the desert. And I just thought, man, Oregon's the weirdest coast, and I love it. It's nothing like what you picture for when you think of small coastal town. You don't think of it's not like these cute little big white sand beaches and all that. It's giant rock cliffs on one section and big green trees, and it's just beautiful and dramatic. But I knew if I wrote a small town, I'd have to kind of put my own twist on it, and I'd have to find a way to touch on the things that maybe aren't always so pleasant. It's kind of about what town you are in, and you're finding your people. There are some downsides to some small towns, and from there, it was just a matter of like, what do I want this story to be about, and then it was characters and just really fleshing out those character profiles. So for me, like, whatever the inspiration is, take that and then figure out who your characters are, and you're going to tweak it as you go along and as you figure out how can this better serve the story. But if you have a good baseline, it makes everything else sort of build up in a lot easier way.
Well, I think that leads to everyone's next question, which is, what is next? Are we going to see more characters from this series, from this book? What can you tell us?
I have already turned in a book for Brennan Ellis, so I can say that. And it's probably my favorite book that I've ever written. But not a single person that read that arc didn't say something about them. So this is the first time I've ever done a series, but it's also the first time I ever started writing something where two other characters immediately jumped out at me. So it wasn't necessarily super planned, but yeah, I definitely can't wait for everybody to get to come back. And I hope that, I hope I get to hang out there. I just saw comments saying she's still a bird. Yeah, I know what I did there. I couldn't stop myself. Once I figured out that, like, oh, I think there's a story for them, I was like, all right, I got to sprinkle in enough in there just to really rev everybody's engine.
Oh yeah, as I was reading it, I was just like, okay, like I'm putting you guys to the side, and if you do not get another book, like I'm done.
And I had a lot of people that were like, no spoilers, but oh, it is kind of a spoiler. It's probably too early. Never mind. I was gonna say the epilogue was a little bit of people were like, what? Like at first, like, is this their story? And then, yeah, no, anyway, they get their own book. They get a whole book.
Well, I think that we are all very excited. I won't speak for everyone. I will speak for myself. I can't wait. I want it now, but I will be as patient as I have to be.
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing with the timeline stuff. Everything takes a little longer, but it'll be worth it.
I believe it. It will be worth it. And in the meantime, we will just look at everybody's posts and their character inspirations and does this guy look like Benson Boone to you?
I don't know. I've had a lot of fan casts that have been like, oh, that is incredibly, incredibly accurate. But for me, I don't know. Somebody said Pedro Pascal. Somebody said, when I was writing it, I kept picturing, I don't know how you say his first name, Michelle Huisman.
Okay.
Yeah, that he played Dario in Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And yeah, a lot. I also forgot to say in November, I have the renovated co-op that comes out. So that's what's next for me. But the next Spoons book will be next year.
Well, we cannot wait. I'm so excited. And thank you. I've been so excited about talking to you about this book, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and give us all the insight.
I loved it. I loved it. Anytime.
Okay, well, then I'll just bring you back next time.
Perfect. I can't wait. I'll come back anytime. I
All
can
right.
yap stuff all day.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. See you later.